Hello everyone, and welcome to a special episode of Legacy Gaming with Atari Man 71. Before I begin, I'd like to remind everyone to play the games you have. Definitely grow your collection, but remember to play the games you have in your collection. I'm doing these streams because I have an extensive collection that I really haven't touched in almost 15 years. Try not to collect just for the sake of collecting. These games were really meant to be played. And now that I've played through all 123 unique games which I own that were published by Atari for the 2600, I would like to give you my list of 20 cartridges that I think everyone should have in their collection. These games are not the rarest games, nor are they always the most expensive, but they are fun to play, and I enjoyed playing them for my stream. Also, I just want to say that this is my own personal preferences based on the gameplay that I have experienced. I'm listing these cartridges here in order of the cartridge number. So before I begin, I just want to say if you enjoy retro gaming, or as I'm calling this, legacy gaming, please like this video, please subscribe, and please follow me on Twitch, Twitter, and YouTube. I'm active on all three platforms, and I'm active under the same name, Atari Man 71. So the first cartridge on my list is cartridge CX2608. It's Super Breakout. I covered that in episode 3. And I don't normally like paddle games, and honestly, I'm not really very good at them, but Super Breakout is a Pong type game. You know, historically that's really what Atari started with. And it's a Pong type game where you break out cells and try to advance. It's actually pretty fun, and the more you play it, the more you become good at the game, and so it becomes more fun. I'm not saying that it's not fun at the beginning, it's more frustrating, but you know, it's definitely better the more you play it. The second game on my list is Warlords. It's cartridge CX2610. I covered that in episode 4. And Warlords was a favorite in my house. I had 3 brothers growing up, and we could compete against each other in this game because it takes up to 4 players using 4 paddles. And this is another paddle game. It's interesting, you know, because like I said, I really don't like very many paddle games, but Warlords was one I definitely enjoyed. You can play it with 1 player, 2, 3, or 4, and it's pretty fun. You basically defend your warlord in your corner of the screen, and you bounce a ball and try to take out the other warlords, the other 3 warlords in the game. And it's not a simple one and done, you know, it's a best, I think, of 10. And, you know, it's actually a pretty entertaining game. And if you play it with a lot of people, it's actually really fun. Cartridge 3 on my list is cartridge CX2613, and it is the cult classic Adventure. I covered that in episode 5. And this game has the first Easter egg that was ever hidden in a video game. You can figure out, if you can crack the egg, you can figure out who the programmer of the cartridge was. I have yet to do that. I have fun playing it, but I've never been able to kill all 3 dragons in the 3rd stage. It's in game 3 and level 3. And it's actually difficult to do. But once you kill the dragons, it's just a matter of dragging the appropriate items to the appropriate place, and then you can get to it. But I always have difficulty getting all the dragons killed because the bat tends to steal my sword all the time, and I just end up getting killed and eaten by a dragon. The 4th game on my list is cartridge CX2628. It is Bowling, which may surprise some people. I covered that in episode 9. And Bowling is a personal favorite of mine because I played it with my cousin when I visited him, and you know, we had a lot of fun with it. He was really good at it, and I was just learning because I really played it very seldom. But it's actually pretty challenging, and I've never gotten a 300-point game. I've gotten in the 200s, but never 300, and so it's a pretty fun game, and it really, you know, it's really good to pass the time with. It's actually kind of a fun game. The more you play it, I think the more you get into it. The 5th game on my list is cartridge CX2632, and it is the granddaddy of them all. It is Space Invaders, and I covered that in episode 10. And I will tell you, Space Invaders was, at the time, a big fan favorite. You know, it was very similar to the arcade game. You know, it didn't look like it, but it was very similar, and the gameplay was intense and pretty fun. The attacking aliens speed up as there are fewer of them, and it becomes more challenging. And there's really a sense of accomplishment when you clear the board. Even though another round starts, it's actually a pretty fun game. The sixth game on my list is cartridge CX2638, and it is Missile Command. I covered that in episode 12. And Missile Command, again, was a favorite in my household. My brother enjoyed it. My father enjoyed it. I enjoy it. If you get up to level 13, it is very intense. That's the highest difficulty level. And I will tell you, things are coming fast. And if you can use a trackball with this game, but I never did. We always had the joystick, and I always played with the joystick. It's actually pretty fun with the joystick and pretty challenging. The seventh game on my list is cartridge CX2648. It is Video Pinball, and I covered that in episode 15. Video Pinball is a personal favorite because my cousin had this game as well. He was very good at it, and I enjoyed it as a kid. And you know, I recall playing actual pinball games, and I know you still can, but they were really a lot more frequent when I was young. And this game is a close approximation, as close as you could get at the time. And you know, you could, if you got good at it and you got good at manipulating the ball, you could play this game for hours. And you know, it was always just a challenge to get a higher score. You know, the scoreboard goes up, I think, to 1,000,000. And so, you know, the challenge was to get it to 1,000,000. I never did. I think my cousin did one time. I think I saw him do it. But it requires a lot of gameplay, and it's challenging, and so it's fun. The eighth game on my list is cartridge CX2649. It is Asteroids, and this was a personal favorite of mine growing up. We had this. It was one of the first games my parents bought for our Atari, and I would play it for hours on end. My mom got sick of hearing the and she assumed it was my favorite game, you know, as a child. And at the time, it was. I always played game 33, which was the children's game. I mean, I was only 11, I think, at the time, and so 10 or 11. So you know, it was challenging. I still play level 33, but it's so easy now that I just don't die. And so I played it for preparing the videos for this stream, and I just played it and played it and played it and played it, and I had to tell myself to stop because I could have still been playing it, you know, if I had chosen to go on forever. And it's, like I said, it's a personal favorite because it's got 66 games. 2 of them are for children, but the rest are different varieties. And there's warps, and there's hyperspace, and there's shields, and things like that. It's a pretty fun game. It's a close approximation of the arcade game, you know, and it's pretty cheap to own too. Everybody has a copy. So cartridge 9 on my list is cartridge CX2650. It is Berserk. I covered it in episode 16. And this was also a favorite in my house. My dad really enjoyed playing Berserk. It's not really that challenging of a game at the onset, but the further you go in the game, the more difficult it gets. The faster the enemies shoot at you, the faster the enemies move, and it's really actually a pretty fun game. Berserk also is a cartridge that pretty much everyone had, and it is, you know, a close enough approximation to the arcade game, as well as there were other offshoots. You know, other consoles made games like Berserk. They didn't call them Berserk, but it is a pretty fun game. So game 10 on my list, we're halfway through, is cartridge CX2655. It is Yar's Revenge, and I covered that in episode 18. And Yar's Revenge is one of those classic games. It has great sound. The sound in that game is really a great soundtrack. I mean, the undertone, the wah, 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 and then when you shoot and destroy the Kotar, it's a really great sound. And it's a pretty challenging game. Even though it's a little repetitive, you do the same task they find ways to mix it up, and it's a fun game to have, and most people have it, and it's pretty fun. So the 11th game on my list is cartridge CX2663, and that's Roadrunner, and I covered that in episode 20. And this game was actually pretty new to me. I just recently acquired it, and it was a late release. I don't know why the number was so low, the cartridge number was so low. I guess they had been planning it for a while. But it turned out really well. It's a pretty fun game. If you enjoy the cartoons, it's a silly game to play. You get points for hurting the coyote. There's challenges and things like that that you need to go through to get to the end of the level, and it's pretty fun. And there's birdseed that you can eat, but there's also steel shot that you can eat. There's grenades that you can eat, and it kills you. I mean, there's all sorts of different fun things in this game, and it's a pretty good approximation of the cartoon. And so it made my list. Even though I've not played it a lot, it was actually pretty fun, and I enjoyed it. So cartridge 12 is CX2675. It is Ms. Pac-Man, and I covered that in episode 23. And Ms. Pac-Man is basically the best Pac-Man game for the 2600, I believe. It's it's a lot closer to the arcade game than Pac-Man was. Pac-Man was basically someone's interpretation of a video game based on what a 2600 could do, and they didn't really challenge what the 2600 could do to make it more like the arcade game. And it was really a disappointment for me. Pac-Man was a disappointment for me. We had Pac-Man, we did not have Ms. Pac-Man when I was growing up. And so Pac-Man, or Ms. Pac-Man, was a game that I didn't encounter until my friend had it for the 5200, and that absolutely looks like the arcade game. So this one is a close enough approximation, and probably the best thing you could do with an Atari 2600. Game 13 on my list is cartridge CX2685. It is Gravitar, and I covered that in episode 26. And Gravitar is one of those games that it's really basic. Now, I've had this game for a long time, and I didn't play it until recently. And so I was surprised at how challenging it was. And it's actually a very difficult game, but it's actually pretty fun. And there is a level of the game where you can have 99 lives. And trust me, you'll need them. The game is challenging, and so you have to get to a planet, and then you have to kill the enemy bases on the planet without crashing into the planet, and gravity is constantly working against you, pulling you toward the planet. And so you shoot out of the front of your ship, but you are constantly battling gravity, so you have to move against it, turn around, shoot, turn around, move against the gravity, and float around the map. There's fuel pickups that you need to manage your fuel, because if you don't manage your fuel, your ship is destroyed. There are also UFOs that come in and shoot at you, and you have to destroy them. There's also a UFO on the map of the planets, and if you bump into that, you have to go into one-on-one combat with it. It's a pretty fun game. It's pretty challenging. So cartridge 14 on my list is cartridge CX26118, and it is Snoopy and the Red Baron, and I covered that in episode 31, as well as my extra dated 4/26/21. And Snoopy and the Red Baron is one of those games that, I've had it for 20 years, close to 20 years. I played it when I first got it, but then I put my collection up, and I just started getting back into it. And, the game is something that, I have, I've played it a little bit, and it's actually pretty challenging. And in the extra, I go so far as to collect all the treats that the Red Baron drops, and get this gold baron. I think it's 30 kills to get a gold baron or something like that. There's all sorts of little achievements in the game, and it's actually pretty fun. You could spend a lot of time playing it, and it's actually a decent game for the 2600. And if you like Peanuts Gang and Snoopy and the Red Baron especially, you'll enjoy that game. So cartridge 15 on my list is cartridge CX26118, It is Millipede, and I covered that in episode 32. And if you saw that episode, you may understand why this is my favorite game. This game is like what Centipede should have been. It's Centipede on steroids. There are so many enemies in this game, and things come at you so fast, and you don't know what's going to do what. You end up just trying to kill everything in the map, and basically making it so that you can survive through to the next level. It's a pretty fun game to play, and I'd recommend getting it if you have a chance. It's not that expensive, and the gameplay is intense. So it's basically on the top of my personal preference from games published by Atari for the 2600. So cartridge 16 on my list is cartridge CX26120. That's Stargate, or also known as Defender 2, and I covered that in episode 33. And this is basically what Defender should have been when it came out. However, they weren't able to manipulate the memory the same way. They were dealing with a lot of restrictions on displaying sprites that they figured out at a later time. And so this game is very similar to Defender that was in the arcade. It's a pretty fun game to play. And I'd recommend you picking it up because it is actually a pretty decent play. So the 17th game on my list is cartridge CX26136. It is Solaris, and I covered that in episode 35. And this game, I believe my cousin had this game, although I have spoken with him and he doesn't think he had it. In it, you deal with a star map and you travel between different systems, fight enemies. You can fight on planets, you can fight in space, you can rescue stranded enemies on planets, you can refuel and repair your ship on the planets, and then also the enemy can destroy your planets, and at the end of it you need to reach Solaris, and I guess that's the end of the game. But it's a pretty fun game, it's pretty fun gameplay. It's challenging, and you could play it for hours and have a lot of fun. There's lots of different enemies in the game, and there's lots of different things to do. You fly around. I think there's 16 different quadrants, I think they call them, and then within the quadrants there's 20 or so sectors, and in each sector some are open, some have enemies, some have your planet, and some have enemy star bases that are friendly. There's all sorts of different things to the game. And this game coincidentally uses the color black and white switch, I believe, to switch between your radar, basically your long distance radar, your forward view. The 18th game on my list is cartridge CX26168. It is Off the Wall. I covered that in episode 38, and Off the Wall is kind of like an advanced game of Pong that uses the joystick, and I find it a little easier because paddles nowadays, if you don't clean them and clean the electrical contacts in them, they're jumpy, and so they don't stay where they should, and really I should go through and just clean one set of paddles just so I have a good set of paddles to use to play games. But Off the Wall is basically a Pong game, and it's themed. It's got almost a Chinese theme. It's supposed to be the Great Wall, and there's a dragon on the other side of the Great Wall that's attacking the cities, and you need to destroy 6 of the dragons to advance to the next level. Then there's also this crow that can either help you or hurt you. There are also pickups that make it so that you can control the ball, or the ball becomes a bomb when it hits the wall and blows out huge sections. It's a pretty fun game. It's pretty challenging. I've never gotten that far in it. I consider it an accomplishment to make it to the second level at this point, but if I played it more, I think I could get a little further than I have. The 19th game on my list is Radar Lock, and that's covered in episode 39. And Radar Lock is basically Afterburner for the Atari 2600. It's a pretty fun game. You destroy enemies. The first you destroy drones. I think that's the first stage is you destroy drones. And then you go in and destroy enemies. But after each mission, you need to refuel. And that's probably the most challenging part of the game because I haven't quite figured out how to get it to refuel all the time. But I did for my stream in episode 39. And so you can see it there. But it's a pretty challenging game. And it's pretty fun. If you like games like Afterburner, and that's really the one that I do. I played Afterburner in the arcade. I played Top Gun for the NES, and Radar Lock is a recent acquisition, but it's actually pretty fun to play. If you like games like that, I would highly recommend picking it up because it actually is a great play for the 2600. And the 20th game on my list is probably the most expensive one to own. And I say that because not only is the cartridge expensive, but you need some additional equipment. So it's cartridge CX26183, and it is called Sentinel, and I covered it in episode 40. And in addition to the cartridge, you need to own a light gun, and I believe any 9-pin light gun works. I have one for the XE gaming system, but they really weren't that common back when I was younger, and this was a late release from Atari. And then also, you need to own a CRT television because, as many of you know, anytime you use a light gun, like with the NES, you need a CRT television so that it accurately displays the screen because the screen flashes and puts a white blip where the enemy is. And if the gun is over the white blip at the time you shoot, then it will accurately record a hit. If it's not, then you have a miss. And unfortunately, with the way that the systems work and the TVs work nowadays, it just doesn't work. So you need to own additional equipment, but I will tell you, Sentinel was very fun to play, and I would recommend picking it up if you have a chance and playing it because it's actually a great game. It's unfortunate that it came out so late for the 2600, but as time went on, they were able to figure out additional things that they were able to do with the 2600, and so unfortunately it was after the game collapse in the United States, and not too many people owned the game, and not too many people got to find it because many people, by the time that game came out, many people had moved on to the NES or even the 7800 or the 5200 or ColecoVision or something else, and so the 2600 just was passé at the point, and no one really played it anymore. And so I consider these the must-have games for the 2600 collection. And again, this is simply my personal preference for my gaming experience. You may feel differently. If so, please leave a comment. I feel that these games are games you can pick up at any time and put them in and play them and have a good time. And you can play them with people, you can play them alone. Primarily, I focused on single-player games because I've had difficulty finding people to play against me with the 2600. It's still, something that people are like, I just don't want to play that. My kids are really not into it. When they were young and they didn't know any different, they would sit down with me and play the Atari. But now it's all PS4, PS5, Xbox this and Xbox that. But if you have a chance, check these games out. You can play them on ROM before you buy them. I know that, there's some issues with having ROMs and playing ROMs, that you don't own the license to it. But, if you're using it to try out games before you play them or before you buy them, definitely by all means do so because these are really actually fun games. And these were games, again, that were published just by Atari. So there's games that were made by Activision and Absolute and 20th Century Fox and all sorts of different companies that I haven't really covered yet. I've completed my Atari collection and I've completed my Activision collection at this point. So I'll make a similar video for Activision. So maybe that'll come out this week as well. So that's my video for today. I hope you enjoyed watching it. I know I'm not the best gamer out there, but I'm trying to bring you some information and some gameplay from my extensive collection. And that's why I'm reminding everyone to play the games you have, because I've had this collection for so long and I just really haven't done much with it. And I've enjoyed myself putting these streams out there, and I've enjoyed playing these games. So if you have a collection, I'd advise you just to play it. Don't collect it just to have it. Collect it to play it. And so I'd like to remind everyone here at the end to be healthy and stay safe. Wash your hands and still social distance, even though I think we're through the worst of the pandemic. I think those are good traits to observe just in regular everyday life. And I appreciate you taking the time to watch me play these games and present these here. So I'm going to be switching up my stream, and I'll be streaming Friday, Saturday, and Sunday going forward. I found that schedule helps me in producing content. The videos from the stream will be released Monday through Friday on the following week, so there's going to be a delay in the videos. Previously, I would stream and then put the video out in the same night, and it's just a lot of effort. And so now I can shoot the videos and edit them and get them out throughout the week, and it's a little more, the effort is spread out a little more. It's not any less effort, but it's spread out a little more. So I film on the weekends and I edit on the weekdays. And so the next stream I will be doing will be on this Friday, and I will have 3 new games. And thank you, and have a great day.